Welcome back to Crime Besties, to part 2 of our Alison Baiden-Clay episode. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Number 2. Well, we weren't planning this to be a 2-parter, but here we are.
I always feel a bit like jibbed when there's a 2-parter of a favourite podcast of mine and I have to wait a whole week for an episode.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
It's not ideal. But anyway, It is what it is. You didn't, this episode would have just been crazy long if we had released it all in one go.
And to do it the justice that it deserves, I think we needed to have all the information in there. So,
definitely.
Yeah. That's
it.
Yep. We definitely do. We probably get into more of the nitty gritty of it this episode. So stay tuned.
For sure. And if you haven't listened to part 1, I really strongly suggest you go back and do that now.
For sure. It gives a lot more context, I think, than most places where certainly what I was listening to, and, you kind of get these bits from other avenues than other podcasts that I found, really.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. How's your week been?
Yeah, just trying to remember. I'm like,
what have I done?
Yeah, who am I? Where am I? My usual Friday collapse.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're really madly into it now with all the sports return. Like, winter sports are ramping up already, which just seems insane. I know my son said to me this week at the first training session for his footy was like, Mum, it's just wrong to train for footy in 30-degree heat.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right.
No.
It's a winter sport.
And all the parents standing on the sidelines and we're like, it's daylight and hot.
And sunny.
Like, what?
You need your sunglasses.
It's not like, we're normally at footy training and it's dark and freezing and umbrella
raining.
up.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's different, but take it.
We'll take it for now. Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah. Certainly getting back into all those things. Yes. But it always brings all the, I don't know, there's always a bit of drama with that stuff, isn't there?
Always. It's just one of those things like we were saying the other day, just grab your popcorn and watch because, I mean, we're not those people who kind of get involved in a lot of the sporting drama.
I legit rocked up with my popcorn this week.
But we definitely like to watch from the sidelines and see what's going on because there are people who get really into it. And look, I get that. You want what's best for your kid and that kind of thing. But I just I'm more of a, whatever happens kind of a...
definitely. Because I know there's something in the background at the moment and I just kind of rocked up this week going, well, it's not really my place to say anything, but I can push buttons on someone else to say it and then I'll just sit back and watch.
Yeah, let's see how this all pans out.
Yeah.
But anyway, it'll all work out in the end. It'll all be fine in the end. It's just the scheduling of it all that gets me. But anyway.
Yeah. It's all.
I know all parents
it's like trade season coming up with, we sort of switch between sports and different training nights happen and it's like, okay, so all of a sudden we had all of our routine that goes out the window. We've got a whole new one starting. And it's chaos, but it's good too.
It is great. I love it. And I love that the kids are active and they've got something on and running around most nights of the week and all that stuff. It's good.
Yeah. I know. I always think like I'm mad busy with that. And then I stand at those things and listen to some of the other parents with what they've got because some of them have got 3 kids rather than 2.
And some of them do more than 2 sports or 2 activities.
They do 3 and 4. And it's like, and I kind of go, I couldn't survive.
2 is my cap.
Yeah, 2's cap.
Yeah, 2 each. Sure. They do 2 each. That is more than enough.
Yeah. For everyone's sanity.
That's it. Yeah. In the interest of being really organised, I have taken to doing some meal prep and stuff. And actually, Peter does a lot of meal prep on the weekends as well.
Yeah.
Which is helpful because there just isn't time. By the time you need to eat really quickly before sport or you get home a bit later and then there's no time to cook. But then I feel like I'm spending all day Sunday just cooking.
Yeah.
So it's like taking out a whole day of the weekend just to prep. But then it does make the week go easier,
doesn't it?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, it is a kind of nice thing to be able to walk in at that, because, we have nights where we walk in at 6:30.
Yeah, we've got a 7:30.
Yeah. And we don't get any time like between school and that, so it's the first time we're walking into the door of home that you kind of like, right, you need to be able to just run with it. I have the routine in the car. There's a certain point in the travel where I'm like, this is my point where I start with when we walk through the door tonight, I need lunch boxes out of bags. I need one in the shower. I need the other one doing this. And I'll be cooking dinner and, to be able to just pull something out and microwave it or something or chuck it in the air fryer is far easier than starting from scratch. And
definitely.
Yeah. Cause I meal prep, like in that I have everything cut up usually. That's I usually do. As I unpack groceries, I cut everything. But I've now moved to the whole I've got to pre-cook because it's just
and just so you can chuck something in the microwave at that time of night.
Heat it up, get it on the table. So as for my boys, dish up something beige and they're happy. So an air fryer works.
Whereas my gourmet child would not suffice
No,
for him.
no.
This morning, he's an absolute character, this kid. But this morning, he was like, "Oh, what am I going to have for breakfast?" And I went into the pantry, and our bread was moldy.
Oh,
like, I think I only bought it. Was really good quality Baker's Delight bread. And
no, but I reckon the better quality means that there's less preservatives in it.
Probably.
Therefore, it doesn't last as long.
I'm wondering if it's because it's been hot and humid.
Yeah, that'll do it too.
2 days. I don't even think I bought it. I think I bought it 2 days ago.
Oh, 2 days is not good.
No.
Oh, God, no, that's not right. That's got to have been sitting on the shelf.
But it wasn't.
There.
It was Baker's Delight.
Now, I reckon that's been one that's been missed in their rotation.
Maybe,
because that's
like,
not
right.
right.
It's gross. So then I'm like, I've got no bread. And Lucas was happy because he got a wrap and he loves a wrap.
He'd be stoked.
Happy to have a wrap. And Ollie found in the pantry a cup of tteokbokki, the Korean, those Korean rice cakes with gochujang and cheese sauce. So he's like, "Oh, Mum, it's fine. I'll have that and a yogurt." So he's like heating this thing up in the microwave and he's zhuzhing all the bits and the powders and the sauces and he brought it to me and it was neon orange, this thing, by the time he finished with it. It smelt disgusting. Like, I was like, I would not put that near my mouth. But he was like, "Mum,
he was in heaven.
The best."
Oh my God, that kid.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's literally, he has literally thrown together a breakfast that anyone else would be like, "Mum, that's never happening again. Make sure we have bread."
Yeah.
Like, whereas Ollie's down like, buy more of that stuff. I need more of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, he went off to school very happy this morning.
Oh, God, that's amazing. He's gorgeous. Oh, that'd be so... My kids are so regimented that if we're out of one thing, we are screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my other one's exactly like that, so I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Very good. Should we get into today's case?
Yeah, let's head into Alison and get going.
That's it. It'll pick up where we left off last week.
Yes.
So you'll hear a little bit of a cut and, enjoy.
Well, I think we start off with just days before she goes missing, where we're up to with all of that. So enjoy as much as you can. But yeah, we'll see you next week.
Monday the 16th of April 2012. This is 3 or 4 days before her murder. We don't know exactly the time of her murder.
Before or after midnight. Yep.
Gerard went to see Alison's therapist these few days before, which he then decides later on to use to his advantage. Like, "Oh, look, I was really trying to work at my marriage and I was like really working hard. Like 3 days before this happened, we were at counselling and we were really working through it." Like, that worked to his advantage, didn't it?
Mm.
The night before... Are we ready for the night before?
Yeah.
So we're talking Thursday, the 18th of April.
Yeah.
Now in 2012.
Yeah.
Alison goes to get her hair done.
Yeah.
And she had it dyed. She was a box redhead. Is that what they call it? I think she was naturally quite Auburnish anyway, but she had the most... Yeah, she had like really beautiful hair and she'd gone to the hairdresser anyway because she had a real estate conference she was attending the next day and obviously wanted to look nice. It was probably due for having a regrowth done. I know when I get to that point, I cannot wait for that appointment to come past.
But I think I can see, I don't know, in this I can see her like coming out in terms of getting back into her work life too, because she's gone from fairly, doing so well at Flight Centre and being quite, executive status, to then having children and being stay-at-home mum, and she was bloody good at it. And this is sort of her coming out in terms of her returning to work life, because she now, at this stage had a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So, they're all at school and she's like, "I'm getting back into my work life." To be like feel like you're going back into that kind of mode of getting dressed up to go to like a work function and present yourself. I could just see her being excited about that and that other part of herself being able to be utilised. You're no longer just mum. Now you're both. Like, it's, it just makes me sad.
It makes me sad too.
Yeah.
It's really sad. That night, so the conference that was to be on the 19th was going to be not only attended by Alison.
20th. Sorry.
19th? The next day, the Friday the 19th?
No, the conference was on the 20th.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought she had her hair done on the 18th.
She might have, but the conference was definitely it was definitely the 20th.
Okay. So anyway, that's fine. she basically, you know, she knows she's going to attend this conference, and somehow how did Tony McHugh find out that Alison was attending the conference? Did Gerard tell her?
Gerard told her. Yeah. He just conveniently didn't tell her until the day before.
But Alison knew Tony was going to be there.
No, yeah, she knew that. He told her that night. So Tony told Gerard, you need to tell Alison that I'm going to be there as well. And that was sort of the catalyst of
a point of contention.
That night, their argument was because I think, which we don't know, but from what we can take of what's happened, from what Tony McHugh has, sat on the stand and said, of sort of what's gone on, that quite possibly that night was the conversation of, well, yeah, my fling is going to be there, and Alison being upset about that, rightly so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At 4:59 that evening, Alison's friend texted her about some dresses. So her friend's name's Kerry Ann. She texted her about some dresses that Alison had borrowed to attend a real estate ball that had happened in the weeks prior.
Yeah.
And at 7:50, Alison replied, well, a reply came from Alison's phone that said, of course, I'm sorry that you had to chase them up. I'm attending a conference tomorrow. I can drop them to you by 6 o'clock tomorrow night, or do you need them before that? At 9:25, Kerry replied, all good, need them for next week. Feel like I haven't seen you in ages. Hope everyone's okay. Let's have lunch soon. Mm-hmm. She never got a reply to that text message.
Yeah.
Kerry Ann actually says that the message from Alison was more formal and apologetic than she expected, because they were besties. And so she certainly didn't expect Alison to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't give you your dresses back. She would have been just like, yeah, I'll drop them off whenever, we'll figure this situation out. Did Gerard send the message?
Yeah, there's a thought that maybe.
That night? It's possible. We don't know. We don't actually know. Gerard's account of what happened that night is that at 10 o'clock he went to bed. And Alison was watching the footy show with on her own on the couch. Apparently he's a really deep sleeper.
Yeah, apparently didn't stir at all. Throughout the entire night.
He woke at 6 a.m. and Alison wasn't there, but she goes for a walk early sometimes.
But she doesn't.
But she does.
No.
Gerard was quite concerned when at 7 a.m. she hadn't returned, because she had to leave shortly thereafter.
She was meant to leave by 7 a.m. to get to the conference.
7:15 or something to leave to the conference. So when she wasn't back by 7, he's like, oh, I'm a bit worried. So he called his dad and sister to come over to look after the girls.
He texted her prior to that saying oh, morning, love.
Texted Alison.
Just letting you know, I'm here, and, when you get back or whatever, this is happening.
And then he wrote in that text message, love, Gerard.
Yeah. He wouldn't have written that.
No, you're not writing a love letter.
No.
You're writing a text message, dude. No one signs off a text message.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next time I send you a text, I'm going to sign off love, Emma.
Love, Emma. Because I didn't know who sent me that.
Yeah. Like a fucking idiot. Obviously you've staged that. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened next? He basically decided to go out and look for her in the car. They owned 2 cars. They owned a Holden Captiva, which was only about 8 weeks old, I believe.
Can I just tell you, literally, I think we picked up our cars the same week.
Oh, wow.
Holden Captivas.
Well, your Craptiva just died a few weeks ago.
Off to the wreckers. I find that really, literally 8 weeks old at that point. I was like, oh my God, that's literally the week that we must have picked up our
That's so funny.
Craptiva as well.
That's so funny. They also owned a Toyota Prado. So when he was out apparently driving the route that she would normally walk on, which she didn't normally walk, so I don't know what he was driving, he decided to dial 000 from his car.
Prior to that, though, he had actually called his parents, because he called them every second of every day and asked their opinions on everything. He got his dad to come over, and his sister?
His sister came over, but his sister actually ended up driving around as well.
Yeah.
So just the dad was left at home with the girls.
Yeah, they stayed with the girls while he was going to drive around. So obviously, at this point, the girls are taken care of.
Yeah.
And watched at home by dad and auntie.
Grandpa. Yep.
He's in the car. So at 7:14 a.m. he decides to call 000. Well, prior to that, he did do a Google search to call Queensland Police. So he wasn't necessarily looking to call emergency 000, which is our emergency number. But then, dial 000, obviously.
Well, they advised him to dial 000, which I guess is the standard procedure in this case because it needed, a missing person requires attention.
But just that Google search will come up later.
Yes, it will. Yeah. So he basically said, "Oh, this is my wife. She's missing. This is really unusual," and the 000 operator basically said, "That's fine." Took down all of her details, like what she was possibly wearing, her height, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he's very calm in the call and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I guess pretty early to be for an adult going missing.
Yeah,
I would have probably called friends first and all those sorts of things and been a little bit more.
I just wouldn't have thought you'd go there that quickly.
No, because like the other thing that I think pretty early on, I mean, well, the cops rocked up and they were red flag immediately, but we'll get there. But one of the other thing was that they asked him, we kind of then down the track of police are involved and they've asked the question, well, have you contacted like the conference? Is she already there?
Yeah.
Like, has she gone?
Yeah.
Did she just leave earlier for the conference than you thought? And it was like, oh, didn't even think of that.
But then both cars were still at the residence. So.
But then they were like, because she'd been picked up by someone.
Yeah.
It could, yeah.
But
so there was all these hadn't even actually done any of that due diligence of checking for an adult person. Yeah. Yeah. Hadn't done any of those things. It was immediately like, I'm driving around looking for her in random spots. I'll call the police now. Like it was quite, interesting.
So the 000 operator dispatched 2 constables to 593 Brookfield Road, Brookfield, which was the house they were renting at the time. These 2 constables, hats off to them. They were all over it right from the get-go. Yep. So they immediately noticed.
Well, you'd hope any cop was seeing what they saw.
But the fact that they acted on it so quickly. They did an amazing job.
Yes.
They immediately noticed scratch marks on Gerard's face. Mm-hmm. The house smelt like bleach and was so clean.
And what was his father doing?
His father was putting a vacuum cleaner into the back of his car. Huh?
I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, obviously, so this is the other thing that the police officers were like, can we have a look around the house? And Gerard was like, yep, absolutely.
He was very comfortable for him to walk into the house.
Yep, he was more than happy for them to do that.
Yeah.
Now, Gerard, they were like, oh, mate, how'd you get those marks on your face? And Gerard's like, oh, I cut myself shaving this morning.
Oh, right? We'll put photos of them on our socials.
They go into the bathroom and they're like, there was not one bloody tissue in the waste bin. No. There was not any evidence of, because there were significant scratches.
Yeah.
There would have been a lot of blood.
Yeah.
Not one drop of blood to be found.
No.
Not one bloody tissue in any bin that they looked in.
But what he did do was he had got up that morning, put on shaving cream and shaved his face.
Yep.
He actually got one of his daughters to come in and watch him do that and help him put a Band-Aid on one of those cuts that didn't bleed that morning.
So he was implicating his own child.
Yep. So that if they asked her, did you see Daddy shaving this morning? They would say, yeah, I even helped Daddy put a Band-Aid on.
Fucking piece
of shit. But he didn't, there's no way they were shaving.
What had Nigel been vacuuming up? Or what was in that vacuum cleaner? Well, I have a theory.
Oh, please. Because nothing else gets mentioned of this in anything I've read or heard. All I know is he put a vacuum in the back of his boot. What the fuck is he putting a vacuum in the back of his car for?
When his daughter-in-law's missing. Hello? Red flag. Well, clearly. So the police officers basically said, no, you need to bring that back inside. You're not putting that in your car.
No.
And then they actually seized the car later on as well for as in Nigel's car for forensic testing.
Yeah, okay.
But this is my theory as to why he wanted to get rid of the thing. So should I say it now? No, you know what? Let's get through the story and then I'll tell you why.
Okay, happy to come back. Yeah. All right, cool.
So, immediately Gerard, the police officers say, any reason you think your wife might have gone missing? And he was like, well, I did have an affair, but that's well and truly over by now.
Oh, but
we've been working
she's
through
depressed.
it. She's really depressed. It's like it was really hard on her. Of course, it'd be hard on her.
She's
heart
she's a bit mentally unstable.
She is taking antidepressant medication. And anyway, so The other thing he said is, like, her grey tracksuit's missing from the wardrobe. She's got 2 tracksuits. She either wears a black tracksuit when she goes walking or she wears a grey one, and the grey one's missing. Yeah, the grey one's missing. And her shoes aren't where they normally are. Okay, cool. The constables immediately called in their superiors.
Yeah. As soon as they saw those marks on his face, they were like,
this is
red flag.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Now, when Gerard contacted 000, he hadn't even contacted her parents at that point.
Right.
So they actually didn't arrive at the house until 11 o'clock, and they state that they went to the house as soon as they found out something was wrong. So they didn't know. I don't actually know whether Gerard informed them or whether the police informed them that Alison was missing. I don't know. Gerard, apparently when they walked in and Jeff, Alison's dad, said this made his skin prickle, but when he walked in front of the police officers, he said to them, "Hi, Mum and Dad."
Oh.
Alison's parents.
Oh. No,
Gross.
that's a bit weird.
Very weird.
And by the sounds of things, to Jeff, if he's got a bit of a prickle from that, that's not normally how he would speak to them.
Well, apparently sometimes he would, but it was always in front of other people.
Oh,
it was really performative.
When it was, yeah. Ugh, yuck.
Now, at this point, Gerard pulled aside. So Gerard's sister was there, Olivia. Nigel was there, and then Alison's 2 parents were there. He pulled them all aside and said to them, "I've contacted a lawyer. Now, Alison's been missing, 4 hours by this point, 5 hours max, if you think from 6 a.m. till 11 a.m.
Yep.
I've contacted a lawyer and I have been advised not to make a formal statement." And Jeff was like, why? Why have you contacted a lawyer?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even know what's going on yet.
I think his response to that was literally something along the lines of, well, because they quite often look at the husband at these times.
The police asked whether Gerard would let them photograph his scratches, so they did so at the house at that point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a forensic photo, so they literally just took a photo of his face. There was no rulers, nothing like that involved. So
that comes a bit later.
Yeah, that comes later. The police were just trying to suss out exactly movements and what had gone on that morning. And Gerard was adamant, I would never leave my kids, so I got my dad to come over before I went looking for her. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He refused to speak to the media. The police asked for a plea to the public, with media, and he refused to do that, which meant that her parents then stood there and did that. And if you watch that, it's heartbreaking. They are desperate for any information about where she is. Opposed to that, a few days later, because the media kind of jumped on all this and they were all over him, there is a moment where he does give an impromptu media. He speaks to the media.
This is at the front of his mum and dad's house now, because the police had secured their home as a crime scene pretty straight away after that. Yeah.
If you watch that one where he speaks, it's like a moment where I think the public literally go from, could the husband have done this, to, oh my God, he's so guilty. He literally, the way he speaks in that media moment is just so fake.
I know I've written down. I knew I'd written down a quote from that. That appeal that he made. The crocodile tears, he's like, no tears in his eyes.
Nah.
I just want everybody to know that I've helped the police as much as I can.
No, you haven't.
Nah, you haven't.
Nah. He categorically was like, but I've let them do everything and I've helped them where I can. I'm just not giving a formal statement. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, a formal statement would help.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what they need.
And if you've got nothing to hide, why wouldn't you do that? So just really quickly as well, when the police secured the house as a crime scene, they also secured the cars that were on the property, and they noticed that in the boot of the Captiva, so apparently there was like a carport type situation.
Yes.
And the Captiva was reversed into the carport, and then the Prado was kind of like in front of the Captiva, like just a bit off to the side of it.
Yeah. It's a bit awkward to get to the Captiva a little bit.
Yeah. But also, the Captiva was backed in.
Doable.
It was doable. The police are sort of like looking at the cars and just doing their first visual sort of assessment of what was going on, and they noticed there were kids' toys in the back of the Captiva. But they were all nicely boxed, and it's not like there were toys strewn over the car. Like, I mean, if you have a look at any of our cars, like
so, like things roll around in the car.
You've got balls, you've got
kids shit everywhere. Yeah, this was like placed. And where things would not be then when you were driving around. It was very, and then the housekeeper said to the police, those toys have been under the house for years. They're actually, they're 10, 8 and 5. They don't play with those anymore.
They were like literal baby toys that he'd obviously gotten out of under the house and
to go, oh yeah, the boot's full of things, like you kind of put something in there.
Yeah. Because the boot was full of kids' toys.
Yeah. Because then they found knowing the Captiva like I do, in the third row of seats, which like you lay down, like, if you're in the boot, like they lay down, right? So, or you can pull them up and have a third row. There was a belt buckle which had this stain on it, which was described as looking like maybe a soft drink spill kind of thing. That's how it looked to the eye, which was later tested and found to be blood, and did return DNA of Alison Baiden-Clay's. So yeah, there was clearly something going on in the boot. Yeah.
I mean, explain to me how Alison's blood.
Well, as I said, it was an 8-week-old car. Like this is not
in
something
the boot
like,
too. Like, yeah. I mean, I've got 3 rows in my car. I've literally never been in the back row. I wouldn't have ever been in there.
No, same. I know what you mean. Like you just don't. It's the kids. That's
where the
their
kids
domain.
go.
Like the kids go back there.
There's barely any air back there. No, I'm not going back there.
There's no freaking air back there. You've been in mine.
I've been in the back of your. Actually, that is a funny story. One day, this is before you got rid of the Captiva.
I was just struggling along.
I can't even remember where we were going, but we had like heaps of people in the car, and we were driving into the city for some reason. And I was like, I'll volunteer to go in the back. It's fine. Don't worry, guys. But unbeknownst to me at that time, I now know it was a really hot day. But unbeknownst to me, the middle row doesn't even have air in
not in a
car.
Captiva. There's no air for any children.
Yeah. So not only did the middle row people not have any air, I was like stuck in the back, no windows. I'm like suffocating in there. Wherever we were going, I remember getting out of the car and being like, my
Sister
underarms.
Act. It was freaking hot.
Right. It was so hot.
Bloody hot that night.
I was like dripping with sweat. It was so gross. So yeah, don't go in the back. No, that's for the kids. The kids, they deal with heat better.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, they cope.
Now, the police have started canvassing the area.
Yeah,
and they've started to gather statements from neighbours and that kind of thing. And there were multiple reports of like different types of screams. Some described it as a yelp. Some described it as a scream. 3 to 4 different reports of different noises and unfortunately slightly different times. But I think when, if someone said, oh, what time did you hear that scream? You're like, oh, I don't know. It was like, 9. But it could have been 7. It could have been 10. Who knows? One neighbour said she heard a sharp, startled yelp somewhere between 7:30 and 9 p.m. Another woman said she heard a scream just before 10 p.m. So there's lots of things going on. But what the police actually found was a neighbour, I think it was diagonally across the road from Alison's house. She came home with her teenage children and her teenage daughter walked through a spider web at about 10 o'clock and screamed. So now the police are like, well, what are people hearing? Are they hearing something that happened with Alison, or are they hearing this girl who walked through a spider web having a bit of a tanty about it?
Yeah, don't blame her.
No. Oh, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, and Queensland have some pretty gnarly insects. Yeah. So, okay, fine. Okay. So by Saturday, the police wanted to know the name and phone number of the woman that Gerard had told them when he reported Alison missing. They wanted to know who that was, this affair that he'd reported. What's her name and number? And he's like, oh, her name's Tony McHugh, but I'd have to go and find her number. I don't know where her number is. Then he's fucking dick. God, he's a fuckwit. He's straight on the blower to her to say, oh, by the way, the police are about to contact you. Seriously, dude? Like, seriously?
He rang her while she was talking to the police.
That was later on, I think.
Was it?
No, I'm pretty sure that was later on. Okay. I think that was when they formally interviewed her.
Right. Well, I think because he rang her and like was saying to her, we have to lay low, like, you know.
Yeah.
And she's literally being interviewed by the police.
Yeah. That was when when she was being interviewed.
What dickhead.
They asked him around this same time. I think it was in that same phone call where they were asking for Tony's number. They asked him to come into the station for some forensic photos, and he decided to do that. So I don't really get, you're cooperating with having photos of these scratches taken, but you're not willing to give a formal statement. So I don't know what that was.
Well, I think he had to. Like, I mean, if he said no, I think that was more
pretty
incriminating
damning
than anything.
Yeah.
Because so he had the scratches on his face. He also had some on his chest, which I'm sorry, I find this hilarious.
Same.
That these ones on his chest were really interesting. I've seen photos of them, and you can't really kind of get a gauge on really what could have created this mess on his chest.
Yeah.
I'm guessing probably fingernails again and that sort of stuff. But he claimed that he'd been at a cross-country event for his daughter at school. And people do remember this incident where he was, and this is days before kind of stuff, the herb going missing, that he did really kind of like, something did bite him. Where on the body, I don't know.
I thought that
there
was something on his neck.
Yeah,
and
I think it was his neck.
Someone saw like a welt come up.
That's true. It was his neck. Now you say that, yes. And so
it didn't explain the
chest, but he claimed that I got attacked by caterpillars. The killer caterpillars.
Now later on, this was absolutely disputed by an entomologist who testified at the trial, and they were like, in Queensland, we don't have caterpillars that crawl up things and fall.
But they also don't have anything that create a bite like as such either.
We have ground-dwelling caterpillars that bite, but we don't have ones that live in trees and will fall on you and bite you. So no, just like categorically not.
Try again. But there's no way. This wasn't a bite. They were scratches. Like it wasn't a bite at all. So
and that one on his chest, like it almost looks like maybe like a bruise type of thing. It
like
bruisey but still there was definitely like scratch type marks
scraping
there.
Like
have a a look at the photos online.
Interesting
how they are interesting.
Yeah. But they photographed him actually 3 times. With the police. So, because by the time they got to the third one, they were like, actually, you know what, we should just get a full body photograph of him. So they hadn't done the lower half of his body; they'd only done upper half. So they were like, can you come back down again, like for another check? Because the other thing he had was on his hands was scratch marks and things too that the police noticed again on that very first day.
But he'd been gardening, Meg.
Yes, he claimed he'd been guarding and helping his neighbour. Yep. But they didn't really present in anything that would have done that, because he did sort of explain that away of how he was doing that. But anyway, so he's going in for his third photograph of his injuries, and what does he do? He drives his car into a pole,
into a concrete pylon.
Yeah,
at a bus stop. Not a bus stop, a bus station.
Yeah. But there were no skid marks prior to this. Like, he literally plowed into it.
But he wasn't.
Then, so he gets out of the car after this accident and falls on the ground and drags himself along the ground as if, his legs don't now work, yelling, "Somebody get my lawyer!
I need my lawyer!"
All this drama. And so they're like, these people are like, they don't know who he is. No one knows who he is. They're like, what is going on? The paramedics do eventually arrive, who again, he kept repeating to them, "You need to get my lawyer. I'm not speaking to anyone. I'm not going to tell you anything about what's happened." Like, what? The paramedics are like, who is this guy? We don't know. They don't know who he is.
They're thinking
what's going on.
Some kind of mental health crisis, because he's driven his car into a pylon, although he wasn't actually going that fast.
No. But so then eventually the cops do rock up to this scene, and who immediately recognised who he was. And
his lawyer also rocked up.
His lawyer got there. Because they don't know who called him.
No.
There was no one at the scene knew who his lawyer was. No one other than him would have been able to call the lawyer.
The paramedics certainly didn't.
No, they don't know who.
By the time I think by the time the police got there, the lawyer was already there.
He was already there. Yeah.
So
this lawyer was advising these paramedics, saying he's not going to talk about what's going on. And they're like, but who is this guy?
Like,
what
we're
the
actually
hell?
just trying to treat this guy who's had a car accident.
And he kept then saying, Gerard kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And one of the cops took this moment and asked him, "Are you sorry about the accident or something else, mate?" And his response was something else. So the cop was like hoping that this was going to be a declaration of what he was sorry for, or some sort of confession. Yep. But the lawyer stepped in and stopped that, so that didn't carry on to getting any further information. But he's gone off to then in the ambulance, and obviously this has sort of given the cops a bit of an opportunity here because they have been able to do a full assessment psychologically on him. What that did was to prove that he was of full sound mind.
Exactly.
And so he couldn't then later in court claim insanity in terms of
which
what
I think this is he has just by doing whatever the fuck he thought he was doing here, he's actually done himself a massive disservice.
The only thing I could think of what he was doing was the other thing that did do in the court case was that some of his injuries, some of the scratches and things couldn't be admissible because they couldn't know if they happened during the car accident or most notably that
chest injury, because they're like, oh, it's a seatbelt from
the
stopping suddenly on a concrete pylon. And he was actually driving a friend's car at the time too, because I think
his car had been
their cars were being forensically tested. Yeah. So just fucking weird.
Oh my God. Like, what on earth? This guy, seriously, I just can't.
Oh, he's a weird dude.
All right. So we're up to 10 days later?
Yeah, 10 days later.
So a canoeist is paddling down the Brisbane River, which is such a beautiful spot.
Oh, stunning.
And off the Brisbane River is a number of smaller creeks and things that break away to that.
Feed into it, yep.
And this paddler, which he went down this Colo Creek, which is not well used at all. He knew of a spot particularly where he was aiming for. It's a lot narrower and a lot more bushy, those sorts of things. So he's paddled down this creek, and he's got further in, and he's unfortunately on the side of the bank has noticed at first he was kind of like, what is that? But he goes, no, that's definitely a body.
And he knew it was probably Alison by what she was wearing and by the appeal that the police
it was so public at this point.
Everyone knew about it, and he could sort of kind of tell the colour of the person's hair, couldn't really make out any other features because unfortunately the body was in a fairly awful state of decomposition, and also it was inaccessible. So if you have a look at the photos of where her body was found, it was like a really steep and bushy embankment straight into the water. So there was actually nowhere for him to get out of his kayak to actually go and check.
He couldn't access the area, and so it was under the bridge too. Yeah,
to his credit, he just paddled as fast as he could and found a phone and contacted the police.
And they arrived on scene immediately.
Yeah, but getting her body out was tricky because of where it was. But they ended up abseiling. There was a bridge, as you said, and they ended up abseiling down the bridge to gather her body and all of the evidence around her body. And again, thankfully they did their jobs the way they were meant to, and they collected a lot of forensic samples before they moved her body, and this included samples of the water. They also any sort of bushes, shrubs, trees, leaves, anything that was on her body, they have bagged and sent away for forensic testing.
In all parts of this, I have to say the cops did an incredible job.
They really did.
Yeah.
You can't fault them.
No.
They did everything they were meant to do, and they did it to the nth degree.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you heard about the couple who lived just off Colo Creek?
Yes.
So on the road that Colo Creek kind of that goes down the side of the creek, basically, which is quite remote. If you have a look at it on Google Maps, there's not a lot around. It's a very bushy area.
But let's just sort of flag too, Gerard sold houses in that area.
Yep. He knew the area. Yeah. It was about, 12 Ks from where they lived?
14 Ks.
13, yep.
Yeah.
That just gives a bit of
so not walking
context.
Distance in that if she's going for a walk before taking the girls off to school, etc. I mean, this would be a 26K round trip from where she was found.
And she only had 1 hour.
Yeah. So she's not
like if she's left home at 6 a.m.
and doing half a marathon.
And she knew she had somewhere to be. She didn't have time to walk 26K.
No, you might do a 5K walk in the morning, kind of thing. Not
in an
13.
hour. That's right.
Then back home again another 13.
Exactly.
No.
So the wife in this couple was a flight attendant.
Yeah.
And she had a 5:30 a.m. call time at the airport. So she had to leave super, 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 super early.
Yeah.
During the night, they were awoken by their dog at about 12:30 in the morning. The dog was howling. Apparently this is quite unusual, although it had happened a couple of times before, and it was like an animal had come onto their property. So they actually went out onto their veranda to have a look to see if they could see anything. And what they saw was really interesting. First of all, they heard some mumbling voices. And they saw two cars driving down the road. Now, this is a road that not many people drove down during the middle of the day, let alone at 12:30 at night. There were two cars. First car, this gets me. The first car had their headlights on. The second car was trailing extremely close behind and did not have their headlights on. Now, the first car, they believe the husband of that family, believed that it was similar to a Holden Captiva.
An SUV style.
SUV hatchbacky type style. The coroner attended the site. So let's just leave that bit of testimony for now. The coroner attended the site and found that the body that they'd found in Hollow Creek was really badly decomposed, so not immediately identifiable as Alison. The coroner performed a CT scan and found that there were no fractures to her body whatsoever, and her hyoid bone was intact. So we know that means she was probably not strangled.
Yeah.
Her lungs, the CT scan of her lungs showed that she hadn't drowned, and so her deposit into the creek, if that had ever happened, say she'd washed up there, she hadn't died by drowning.
They also showed, though, that where the body was and the levels of the water, there was no way that even like the tides, etc. At high tide, the water hadn't reached as far as where her body was found. So it's not even though she could have washed up to that point of where she was found.
Yeah, so they believe her body had been placed.
The body had never been in the water. It was, placed further up or I guess maybe fallen to there or,
There were 3 injuries found on autopsy.
Yes.
The first was a subdural hemorrhage. The second was a chipped tooth, and they don't know exactly when that happened.
Occurred.
But certainly the hemorrhage was severe enough that it could have caused her death, or was likely to have caused her death. They also found a bruise on her left inner chest wall, which...
It wasn't. It was mild.
It wasn't
is what
bad.
they called. They sort of spoke it as being not as extensive as the head injury.
Yeah, due to the level of decomposition of her body, they weren't able to get a blood sample from sort of any venous blood at all. So they were able to get a sample from her liver for toxicology analysis, and the analysis did show Zoloft in her system. Her cause of death was ruled by the coroner as inconclusive. So there wasn't any real smoking gun.
No, they couldn't pinpoint the cause of death, but did rule it suspicious.
Yes.
And not they didn't really rule out anything, did they?
No, they didn't rule anything out. No. Alison had 3 life insurance policies in her name, totaling just under $1 million. They were taken out well and truly in advance of her death. So I'm not suggesting that that these were taken out, weeks before she died. One was taken out in 2000 and 2 were taken out in 2008, and she died in 2012. The suspicious part of this was, though, a week before her death, Gerard contacted one of the insurers and asked for details regarding the policy, specifically, payout of the policy. They wouldn't talk to him, but it was noted in their system that he'd made the call.
It was also noted that he made a call a few days after her body was found, asking if, since she's dead now, do I still need to continue making the premium payments? And when can we get payout?
Yeah, he made that call before Alison was positively identified. So,
I didn't hear. I just knew it was after, but I wasn't sure how far after.
No, it was literally the day after they found her body, and the coroner still hadn't made a positive.
I mean, obviously, assuming it was her, but it was not. Yeah, absolutely.
Everything sort of pointed to the fact that it was probably her, but they had not had
definitively
he had not had
identified that. I mean, there was still a chance, low at that, but that randomly you find out, oh gosh, no, this is some poor other person. Like,
Yep. Fucking asshole.
What a dick.
He tried to expedite her death certificate, so that he could get the payouts quicker.
Yep.
Thankfully, all of the policies were actually paid because there was an active investigation involving her death. The insurance companies, this happens regardless of what's going on, the insurance companies will pay out that death benefit, but they will only pay it into a trust. Yep. They will not pay it to the beneficiaries until the open case is closed.
Absolutely.
Basically, which is great SOP.
Yep.
So, suck on shit, Gerard. You can't get the money that you were so desperately wanting for.
And why? Yep.
Well, were you in roughly $1 million worth of debt at this time?
That's crazy.
No.
Yeah. On May 11th, they held her funeral.
Can I just go back? I'm sorry.
No.
This is the other bit that just really got to me and it really stood out to me as just being horrific. So when Alison went missing, they actually set up like a command post at Brookfield Showgrounds. And so that's where, Gerard was going and, he was actually not actively participating in the search for her at all.
He didn't actively participate in any of the searches, which just blows my mind.
Oh, but he had to be there for his kids, even though his kids were being looked after by his mum and dad, and he was at the command post because he wanted to know information, but he didn't actually want to help. But the day that Alison's body was found, which was on the 30th of April in 2012, Alison's mum phoned Gerard and said, I just need to see the girls. Like, obviously she was devastated.
Oh, God.
And the likelihood was that the body that they'd found was Alison.
Yeah.
So this is... as a mother, I cannot even imagine that.
No.
God. Cannot even imagine that. And I'm so sorry that her family had to go through that. And he said, no, you can't see them. Sorry, what the fuck? Why? And then when it came time to, so obviously then Alison's death, Alison's identity was confirmed and the coroner had released her body and it was time to plan for the funeral. Gerard refused to meet at the house with Alison's mum and dad, and so he offered, in his totally generous spirit, to meet with Alison's dad at a park. But only Alison's dad.
What?
Yeah.
That's the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, it's
what?
so fucking weird.
You would all be wanting to be together
Wait for it. He brought a digital recorder to the conversation and recorded it. Cock. He had demands.
Yeah.
So his demands were... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, totally go for it.
His demands were...
Yeah.
There must be a scout emblem on the front cover of the funeral booklet.
What the...
Now, they had Alison by this stage. She had zero involvement with the Scouts.
No, and he was unsuccessful in what he did with the Scouts.
Yeah. Oh, but Baden.
Blech.
He wanted to make and he called it a speech at her funeral, and he wanted to be the last person to speak.
Yeah.
Was there another demand?
I feel like there were more than that. Something to do with the girl. Well, his threat was that if he didn't have all these things met, that he wouldn't let the girls attend the funeral. What the fuck? How do you use your children
because he's
in that moment?
Absolute cock.
He's
an absolute cock. 600 people attended the funeral, and the police were, hoping that they would be able to catch him out. So they actually put a recording device in the flowers that were on top of Alison's coffin.
That he would arrive early enough that he would have like some time just with her, like as you would as a grieving husband in a normal scenario. The grieving husband would be the first to arrive, have some time, just you and her, like, kind of stuff to have your moment of goodbye. And so they thought that it might be an opportunity that he might speak openly to the coffin kind of thing, and that they would record then that and see what they could get with that. But unfortunately, he arrived late to the funeral with the girls, so they unfortunately missed that opportunity to have that.
But hats off to them for thinking of it.
Oh no, love it.
Yeah, because they were onto him.
Yeah, they were onto him on the 20th of July.
Yeah,
I believe
April. Yeah, I believe one of the very senior police officers in Queensland Police at the time attended the funeral and went up to Gerard at the end and shook his hand and said, "Mate, I'm really sorry for your loss." And Gerard said to him, "I really hope you find who did this." And he looked him dead in the eye and said, "We will. Don't you worry. We'll get him."
I love that.
Oh, I love it.
Because he 100%
knew. He knew, of course.
At that point, who did this. Yeah. I love that. I would have loved to have been him in that moment.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh. I hope Gerard shat himself.
Because at the end, so let's just say, like, at the funeral, Gerard didn't speak.
No.
He actually didn't give a speech at all at the funeral. To Jeff's credit, 100%. Because, I mean, the funeral, now knowing what, the outcome of the fact that he was eventually convicted, that you wouldn't want him as a memory of speaking at her funeral. Mm-mm. So he actually just didn't allow any of those things that he said to Gerard, like what all Gerard's demands were not met.
Yeah.
Jeff didn't allow him to even give a speech, which I just, go Dad.
Go Dad. Yeah,
good on
he was
you
protecting
for his
her
daughter.
right until the end.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
So well done, Jeff. You are a good bloke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the 12th of June 2012, Gerard was charged with Alison's murder. Mm-hmm. So they had a strong circumstantial case.
Very
they didn't have a smoking gun, I guess. So, but by this stage, they were like, well, I think they were they had to do something.
Yeah.
There was no more evidence to be gathered. They had to try and come up with a case.
There's a lot of public pressure on them too everyone was like, it's him. Yeah. So
because in the court of public opinion, it was him, but they had to make sure that the case would stand up in a court of law.
Which they felt very confident in their circumstantial evidence. It was very compelling. They've done everything that they could in terms of, I love the you could probably speak a bit more medically on this in terms of the biologist who they brought in to look at the leaf.
The botanist.
The botanist. So there was a number of foliage bits and pieces that were found within her hair and those sorts of things that this guy came in. He was a local guy, but he also did work for the government. He was legit. It wasn't just some random person they brought in to do this. He was in the role to do this, but just happened to be a local. And he found that there were none of those particular bits of sticks, leaves, whatever that were found were not to be found in the area where her body was found. There was none of that was there.
So
they were only present at the Baden-Clay residence.
Sorry, this man is incredible. His name's Dr. Gordon Guymer.
Yeah.
He was the director of the Queensland Herbarium. So they provided us a free identification service. So if you lived in the area and you had a plant or a shrub or something that you wanted identified, you could actually take it to them and they would identify it for you for free.
Even when it's dead, when I do that to them?
Yours are unidentifiable by the time you've gotten to them. So they engaged So they paid him to come and have a look at the site and all of that. And what he found, out of the 6 exhibits that they'd taken off Alison's body before they moved her, there were 2 species that were found at Colo Creek and 4 that were not.
Yep.
He then, in his own time, over 2 weekends, attended 500 different sites.
Yep.
In and around the area, basically from Colo Creek all the way back to where the Baden-Clays lived, to their house and slightly beyond their house. He was not able, out of those 500 data points, he was not able to find one other place that contained all 6 of those species that were found.
Yeah.
He found one site out of 500 that had 5 of them.
Yep.
None of any of the 500 had all 6, aside from the Baden-Clay's backyard.
Yeah. One of them in particular was hanging off of like the carport where the Captiva was parked. So the thought is of like sort of as getting her into the boot of the car was hanging literally right
like
there.
Over his shoulder or something.
Yeah, that her hair's got, caught on that as he's like putting her in the boot of the car because that's literally where this whatever sort of ivy or plants are not my thing again, hanging off of the roof of the carport. So, I mean, circumstantial, yes, but fuck me. Like we're pretty close here to finding out that she was definitely at home.
Yes.
And then at Colo Creek.
Yes.
And not walking along to Colo Creek or, and the other thing was that they really, like, obviously with no fractures and things like that, falling wasn't really a possibility. But not only that, where her body was under the bridge. So she couldn't have, say, jumped off the bridge or fallen off the bridge.
And we know she hadn't been in the water.
No.
There was no water in her lungs or anything. So it's not like she'd accidentally drowned and washed up there.
No, or tripped and fallen from the, the top of the bank there to fall there. It just there wasn't
couldn't have
enough.
happened. It was impossible.
Yeah.
So the circumstantial evidence that they had at this point was scratch marks on his face and chest, and obviously he had the wounds on his hands as well. They had the blood in the car, in the Captiva. They had the affair.
Yeah.
They had the insurance, and when he tried to, all of the timing of all of that.
Can I just, one thing about the scratches on his face too?
Yes.
So in the days after, he went to see a doctor, right, that he, off his own bat, went to the doctors to get them checked out to prove, they're razor cuts, right? Actually went to two different doctors.
Yes, he went to two.
So the first one said, oh, no, I'm pretty sure they're not razor cuts. The second one he went to, a female doctor, she just happened to have had highly extensive experience in her training around razor cuts, and categorically was like, they're not razor cuts, no way.
I just love that he found the one doctor in Queensland who was an expert in this. And against him, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
But not only that, let's hit the nail on the head with that. He left that appointment with her, handing over his business card saying, if you ever want to catch up for coffee, give me a call. He hit on her.
He was there
his wife
to
just
disprove
missing.
the fact that he had any involvement in his wife's disappearance.
Yeah.
But if he could get some, he'd try it.
Oh, because there's another moment where another agent, not Tony McHugh, another agent altogether, where he had hit on her, and her response, she rejected him. She said, "Oh no, I'm not interested." And he goes, "Well, if you're not interested in that job, I've got another job for you. Do you need my wife killed?"
Oh yeah. What an idiot. God, he's.
I mean, that was well before she was murdered, but oh my God.
The other circumstantial evidence that they have is that 2 days before Alison went missing, Gerard Googled taking the fifth. Mm-hmm. And he also then Googled self-incrimination minutes before dialing 000.
Yeah, so there's a little bit around this.
There is a bit around this. So I'll take the taking the fifth one if you want. So apparently the night that he Googled taking the fifth, which was a couple of days before Alison went missing, he and his mummy and daddy were watching The Good Wife, an episode of The Good Wife that was airing on TV that night. Mm-hmm. And the police have actually gone back and his defense team went back and found that during The Good Wife, taking the fifth was actually mentioned 3 times. And so their explanation for that was that he was just Googling to see what that actually meant after watching The Good Wife. Now, I can actually come at that because taking the fifth isn't something that we have in Australia. It's not an Australian. I mean, I know from watching American TV shows, taking the fifth means you don't speak when you're asked a question to incriminate yourself. Yeah, you're not going to to stop you from self-incriminating. He might not have known that because he was a dipshit.
But in context of the show, I think you could have probably figured that out.
But maybe they wanted an exact definition or something.
I think what he wanted to know was, does that apply in Australia, not just America? Mm. Because then...
But they were able to explain that away. So that was then, the jury can take that as they want.
Yeah, so it can also... Basically what happened was, though, the final search, so after searching for taking the fifth, the next Google search was around incrimination.
Yeah, self-incrimination.
So, and that supposedly was the last search he made prior on the phone. Now, what they've actually proved, though, is that they all happened at the same time, because when he opened up his phone to search for the Brisbane police number, the phone, your phone will still do it to this day. It's not even just a 2012 thing of your browser reopens, and so it researches, it opens up that website again.
That page,
so it looks as though you've searched for it at that time, when actually, in actual fact, the search was done a few days prior.
Okay, so
but I still think that he was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. What if that would apply to me?
Yeah.
And I don't think that
it's not completely innocent.
No, I don't think it's innocent.
But there is a legitimate explanation.
Yeah, I don't think he's done it on the
enough.
day of actually, the morning of him doing this.
Agreed.
I don't think he's done that and kind of then gone, oh, now I'll ring the police.
Yeah, agreed.
I think he's done that the days prior with all this going through his mind. I still think that it incriminates him to intent.
Yeah. Although, okay, let's just say we scrap the taking the fifth, we scrap the self-incrimination. Did you know, I didn't know this until looking into this, but did you know that your iPhone records when you plug your charger in?
Yes.
So he actually plugged his charger in for his iPhone at 1:46 a.m. The morning.
But he was asleep.
He was in a deep sleep from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. Never woke, never stirred.
But his phone was plugged in at 1:46 a.m.?
His defence team said that Alison had plugged that in.
Don't know if you can do that from Colo Creek.
No, it's a bit far.
Sorry.
Also, you have to... No, I'm never going to say that. So the other thing is that when they did the forensic search of his phone, the police said there was a FaceTime phone call from his phone to his dad's phone at 12:30 a.m.
Oh, I didn't hear about
This actually was then found to not be true because his dad's phone was unable to receive a FaceTime phone call because he had a much older iPhone.
Yeah.
So they think that didn't happen. But then his dad, what explains the two cars? I reckon maybe not a FaceTime call happened. Maybe another, a normal phone call happened because... And you could see that something had tried to be deleted at that time too. They know he tried to delete something, but they didn't know what he'd tried to delete. I reckon he tried to delete the phone call to call his dad and be like, fuck, I fucking murdered Alison. What do I do? And then his dad comes. They take Alison in the Captiva to Colo Creek. Then they bring the Captiva back, but the dad's followed in his car for some reason. I don't really understand what were they planning on leaving the Captiva there? I don't really know.
Maybe that was part of the thought process and they were like, oh no, maybe she walked to here, and maybe I don't think there's been a whole discussion about it of how we're going to stage this now.
Obviously that woman, the flight attendant, and her husband saw two cars. They both saw the two cars. And
I don't know how much credibility there is in this because I haven't read the book, and I believe it's in the book, that there's mention of her saying, I know who the man was. I can identify him.
Yeah, so that is true. I've gotten to that point.
Yeah.
So she says that I know who I saw.
Yeah.
But they haven't actually released that in the book because they're worried about being liable for that. So, take with that what you will. There's not really any further information to that in the book, so you're not actually going to get much further there.
Yeah.
Right. So he's been arrested.
Yeah.
He's been denied bail at his initial bail clearing. Thank the justice system for that.
Absolutely. He was found guilty of murder on the 15th of July 2014. It was obviously the trial went for 6 weeks?
4 weeks. Just over 4 weeks.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Jury took a little while to come to their conclusion, but not. I think it was
5 days.
Yeah.
4 or 5 days.
Yeah. However, these charges were downgraded due to an appeal by his defence on the 8th of December to manslaughter. Now, the claim was that manslaughter wasn't sort of considered and wasn't able to be considered by the jury. Now, I'm kind of disgusted by this whole application to the court.
To the appellate court?
Yeah, and how they came to this conclusion that it was a downgrade to manslaughter. They basically said that it was intractably neutral on his issue of intent to kill. Now, so within the trial, they were basically saying that there was nothing that proved his intent. He had intent to kill, and that and even his actions after the murder were neutral to his intent. So I have a real issue with this, and I really feel like that there needs to be legal action in terms of a redefining of what intent is and how it can be presented. Because plain and simply, if he had, because the definition between the difference of manslaughter and murder is this intention that you had to kill or to grievous bodily harm. So he clearly, whether he intended to kill her that night he intended to cover it up.
Oh, and
get away with it.
I think there was intent to kill anyway.
So do I. That to me equals intention.
Absolutely. Have a think about the phone call he made to the insurance company a week before she died.
There was thoughts going whether or not in that.
And even the comment to the real estate person, oh, well, you know, why don't you, or I could give you the job of killing my wife.
The thought of killing his wife had been on his mind enough. On that night, whether he walked into that house that night going, yeah, tonight's the night I'm going to murder her, or whether or not an argument ensued and then in that's happened, that's still intent.
I think the fact that Tony had found out that Alison was attending the conference, Tony wasn't happy that because Tony had only just found out that Alison was attending the same conference as her that day, and she'd said to Gerard, you need to let her know, like, I'm not happy about this. This is fucked, basically.
Yeah.
And like that to me as well is a potential motive.
I actually don't think that he cared too much for Tony McHugh. Like, as in, like, I actually don't think, and I don't think he killed her. I don't think he killed Alison to be with Tony.
Oh, no, I agree.
Right?
I fully agree with that.
So I think it was obviously a catalyst in terms of their argument, all those sorts of things.
That's what I think.
I completely agree with that.
Yep.
So what they also said at this appeal was that there was not enough evidence of a relative motive. Now, you don't have to prove motive for murder. However, coming back to what motive in this scenario is, we talked about the financial gain of like $1 million that he would get out of her insurance.
And he cared about money.
He did absolutely care about money. But I also think, plain and simply, his ego was being hit. Now, he had a failing business that his partners, etc., who had said to him he needs to bring in other people to fix this. And one of those people was his wife, who was well respected and good at what she did.
Very intelligent.
What if she comes in and fixes this? That can't happen, because then it looks like Gerard, can't run the business, but my wife can.
So I think an ego blow to him as well was the fact that his partner's like, well, you're no longer authorised to make any payments.
Nope.
But they let Alison.
Yep, because she was capable.
Decent.
And
a decent
able to do
human.
these things.
Yep.
So this all then goes back to the fact that, I'm sorry, but he was a narcissistic piece of shit.
Yeah.
So I was actually reading a medical article around this link between all these narcissist people and murder.
Sure.
Narcissistic rage. Strong grounds for, in this particular case, this was actually one around the Alison Baiden-Clay case. So it was a medical article written about this.
Okay.
There are strong grounds for concluding that he had narcissistic personality disorder, a consequence of which can be particular susceptibility to narcissistic injury and narcissistic rage. If the person perceives themselves as threatened by attack to their reputation and integrity. So I honestly believe his whole intent here was, Alison is showing me up.
Yep.
And that can't happen.
Yep.
Plus, by getting rid of her, I have a financial gain, and I then have fixed the problem in my business, and I look good again. So I walk away from this as, look at this man has put up with, he's like, he's lost his wife and he's fixed his business all at once and look at him, he's doing so well.
So you think the timing, that actually makes a lot of sense. So the timing, Alison had started tipping the business in the right direction in terms of her fixing things and her involvement, to the point where he could then kind of take that over and take that on himself and be the hero in that story.
Yeah.
But if she was around, he couldn't do that.
It would everyone been like, oh, thank God you brought Alison in. She's fixed this.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. She that is exactly what she would have done. I actually reckon that was a smart move to do, is bring in that intelligent woman who knew what to do to fix this.
Yeah.
Who had skill set in this.
Yeah.
And then, but that wouldn't have looked good for him, because the little wife's come in and fix this, not you, mate.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah. I really honestly feel like more research needs to be done into this narcissistic personality disorder, the link to DV, all those sorts of things, because we are having way too many women lose their lives to men they know, most likely intimate partners. We lost 101 women in 2024 in Australia to this kind of scenario. We are on track again this year to the same number. We've lost 12 women already. Today's the 28th of Feb and we're at 12 for the year. It's not good enough. And if we as a society, need to know this information about people. And I'm not saying every narcissist is a murderer, But coercive control, narcissism there's so much in that if we do more research into that and understanding these personality disorders, we can do more to protect women.
Well said. Well said.
Oh, yeah.
Allison's family. So the 3 girls went to live with their maternal grandparents, and so they ended up raising their grandchildren.
And they've turned out to be amazing beautiful
young women. I believe that Alison Dickie's eldest daughter is a ballerina.
They all go by Dickie. They don't hold the Baden-Clay name.
Yep, they've gotten rid of it, and of course they have. And they are now the faces of the Allison Baiden-Clay Foundation.
Yeah.
I believe they use that name still because it's recognisable to people in the media, although Alison is referred to as Alison Dickey on the website.
Yeah.
They are an amazing foundation, and the girls and Alison's family and friends, they use the funds that are sort of gathered by the foundation to create awareness for women in similar situations to Alison.
Their mission is to create a Queensland community that acknowledges the prevalence of domestic and family violence.
And they're doing a really good job.
Really good job. They have this day of like a Be Kind Day, which just is lovely.
Yeah, that's their motto. You can actually buy, if you want to jump on the website, you can buy like these really cute T-shirts and stuff that say Be Kind and have different slogans. So, those girls have been through so much. Alison's mum and dad and her siblings have been through so much, and her friends, they all loved her so much. And, for everything they've been through, they've been able to, put together this foundation in her memory. So what a lovely legacy to such a horrific circumstance.
Oh. In her journal, one other quote that we have out of there was that she actually wrote that for one of her wishes for her and Gerard was that he treat me with dignity and respect. That is the absolute bare minimum from your husband. So if you are feeling though you are not being treated with dignity and respect, get yourself out.
Seek some help.
Get help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not your fault.
I just realised how long this episode's gone for.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. There was a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Look, we'll finish it up really, really quickly. Thank you to everybody for listening today. Tune in next week, and we are covering the Farquharson Boys. That's another Australian.
Are we?
Isn't that what we're doing?
Oh, no, I thought we were doing Belle Gibson.
Oh, we are too. Oh my God, sorry. The Farquharson Boys are coming up, so don't get too disappointed. We are covering Belle Gibson. So have a watch of the Apple Cider Vinegar documentary on Netflix, which I don't believe is completely true to life events, but, it gives you a bit of an idea. She's a very interesting character in and of herself.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much for listening today. We know it's been a long one, but we really appreciate it. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/2 crime besties, all one word. And please follow us on our socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, like and subscribe, all of the things. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Stay curious, crime besties.
Bye.